All right, guys, today we're going to talk about low-level baseline dopamine or ADHD. It seems that everyone has this today, including myself to some degree, but we're going to talk about what basically causes it. Because we've got a society with hyperpalatable foods, we've got scrolling, we've got screens everywhere. These things all trigger our dopamine response, our reward response for doing something. That's what our dopamine is supposed to give us. When we do something hard, it's supposed to give us a sense of reward for doing that thing that is hard, because ultimately it's supposed to give us food, it's supposed to give us shelter. These things are hard to do, to kill an animal, to find water, to spend the day finding shelter. And then once we achieve that object or that mission, our body, our internal system, our biology gives us a reward, which is dopamine. So the things that are causing it in our society today are very simple and very accessible to us on a day-to-day basis. Basically, we've got hyperpalatable processed foods, we've got a high processed carbohydrate diet, because carbohydrates, out of all the macronutrients, trigger the release of dopamine the most. Why? Because carbohydrate-rich foods are naturally harder to find in nature, like honey, like ripe fruit, because we've got to compete with so many other animals. So when we're having a highly processed, high carbohydrate food, we're already rotting our dopamine systems. We've got caffeine and nicotine. These are all stimulants. They stimulate our stress pathways, which are cortisol and adrenaline, but they also stimulate dopamine to some degree, because they've got this addictive sort of capability to them. And it's addictive because it releases so much dopamine. Okay? And scrolling is the next one. When you're scrolling through something, it's like the reward comes from, we've got this perception that there's going to be something exciting on the next reel, And so when we get to the next reel, we get this small release of dopamine every time. Even though it's not a good reel, it's a shit reel, it might be a good reel, whatever. That's the whole seeking part of the dopamine system. We are actively trying to find something that is going to give us that reward or give us that fulfillment, and that's ultimately dopamine. So when we're looking at ADHD in general, and ADHD is the lack of motivation, the lack of focus, the lack of reward from mundane tasks, we have to reduce all these things which require no effort, which require absolutely nothing to get dopamine from. Because now we're just driven. So if getting dopamine by nature was naturally hard because we had to go and hunt, we had to go and look for things, we had to go and physically exhaust ourselves to get that reward feeling from our biology, and we can get them from lying on our back, sitting on the toilet, just going for a scroll, just eating shitty food that's got no nutrients in it, that's got a high reward trigger in our body, we then lose the sense of reward from mundane tasks or things that we need to do. So all those things that I just said need to be reduced. This is why going back to a whole food diet, this is why replacing table sugar with raw honey, because it's got actual benefits to it. This is why probably reducing the carbohydrates to some degree is a beneficial thing, and focusing more on proteins and fats, which is a more stable energy source, and your body loves fats because that's where you create your hormones, it's where you create nice, plump, fresh skin. For example, your lips are very dehydrated, but they rehydrate with fat. So yeah, when we're looking at ADHD, low-level baseline dopamine, whatever, you don't have to be diagnosed with ADHD to know that you've got the symptoms for it. And I can definitely put my hand up and say I definitely suffer from these symptoms from time to time, and I know how to reset my baseline dopamine so that I can get rewards from doing things like making videos, working harder, doing mundane tasks, things like that. And that's ultimately what we need in our day-to-day jobs so that we can actually perform.